Hi and welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about the fundamental concepts of Microsoft Azure. So, we are going to talk about what is a resource group, subscription, and few concepts of Azure Active Directory as well. So, first, let's talk about what is a resource. So, resource is nothing but an entity, any entity which is managed by Microsoft Azure for you. That is called as a resource. For example, virtual machine is one resource, web application is one resource, and even when you create a web app, so it might create app service plan or application inside behind the scene. So those are also called as resources. So subscription is nothing but a logical container which is useful for managing your resources. So uh, each resource, remember each resource is so part of a single subscription only. So any resource that you are using will be part of only one subscription, and you have a different ways where you can subscribe to the services. So when you log into the portal, so you might get few credits. So that is come under free subscription. So second is pay as you go. So this is a way where you can use services and you are getting billed for the resources that you have used for maybe on a monthly basis or the yearly basis. And also you can avail few member offers that are present on the Microsoft website. Resource group is nothing but a logical entity. It's a logical entity which is which is used to manage the resources. So it is a logical container for managing your resources. So what is the use of resource group that we will see? Let's consider you have three teams. So team one is managing mobile development, team two is managing API part, and team three is managing your data. So team one is using few resources, and those are few resources which are logically grouped together in a specific resource group. Similarly, team two and team three also have created their respective resource group under which their own set of resources are actually created. So what is the benefit of this is, for example, if a new developer joins API team, so now it will be easy for the administrator to decide which resource group he needs access on. So as he is a part of API team, so admin will give access to only that particular resource group so that he will not have access to team 1 and team 3 resources. Now let's consider you have the different environments, so development, test, and the production. So, and each of your environment has their own subscription model. So now it will be easy for the admin to manage the subscription, and it will be easy to just take a look at the resources that are there. And in futures, suppose a test environment is getting billed higher than the usual you are billing uh, in the last few quarters. So you can just go ahead and just optimize the solution, analyze it, what you can do to optimize it, and you can even delete the resources that are there but you are not actually using it. So it is a kind of a logical container where you are managing your resources, so it becomes easy to manage those resources when you have a different subscription. Now let's talk about Azure Active Directory. So let's first consider the difference between Windows Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. So we all know in case of Windows Active Directory, it is used to manage your IT solutions, and it will manage your resource, your users, and yeah, maybe groups. So it is very much useful in case of managing your IT solution. So remember, Azure Active Directory is not a replacement of your Windows Active Directory, but it is an extension to what you can use, because traditionally we were using Windows Active Directory, but now people are moving towards cloud and they are using more software as a solution from different cloud vendors. So in this case, we are not able to use Windows Active Directory. So now Azure has provided us a service which is a Azure Active Directory service, wherein you can just sync your normal Windows Active Directory users and credentials to Azure Active Directory, so that you can leverage the use of cloud, and you can use the software as a service solution by using the same credential for both your Windows Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. So what advantage of using Azure Active Directory is? Yes, so simplified access. As we talked that if you sync your Windows Active Directory with the Azure Active Directory, so the user in your organization will have to only remember the credential for one a Windows Active Directory, which he can use uh, for accessing the cloud applications as well. So that is a simplified access and the secure access. So only the users that are present in your organization will be synced to Azure Active Directory, and only those users can access your cloud applications. And the same credential that you use can be used for the different software as a service solutions. And you can just extend the security aspect by using multi-factor authentication. So you might have used these features when you log into your uh, uh, Outlook or maybe log into your Microsoft Word document. So, in short, for managing your Office 365, you might have used multi-factor authentication. So, managed identity is nothing but when you have two services that are present in Microsoft Azure. So, managed identity is a principle, security principle, which can be used to authenticate your application within the Azure. So, for example, if you have created one application which is going to use a service known as a key vault, so to authenticate that application to use that key vault service, so you can use a managed identity service. So managed identity is very much specific to authentication of the two resources that are present in Azure. And also privileged identity management is a service which can be used to manage your resources, who all can access the resources, for how much duration that they are going to access, or even control all of those things and monitor who all accessing what resources. So in this diagram you can see currently Azure Active Directory can be used to authenticate different software as a service solutions such as Office 365, Salesforce, Google Apps and whatnot. So that is a secure way of authentication. Now let's talk about Azure AD Tenant. So what is a tenant is nothing but a dedicated and trusted instance of uh, Azure Active Directory. So when you create a Microsoft Azure account, so Microsoft creates a default directory for you. So but if in case you want to manage multiple tenants, so you will have a dedicated instance of Active Directory for each of your tenant. So that is known as Azure Active Directory tenant, and each of your tenant will represent a single organization. So we are going to see how we can manage that. And the management group is nothing but it's a logical containers that you use for one or more subscription. So as we talked about managing your subscription for different environments, so dev environment, test environment, and the production environment. So you can manage these subscription under one umbrella, which is a management groups. So let's talk about region and availability zone. So region is nothing but a set of data centers deployed within a latency-defined perimeter and connected through a dedicated regional low-latency network. So that means for a particular geographical area, you might have a different sets of data centers present to serve the customers. So Microsoft has created different data centers for different countries in a different part of the specific countries. For example, in India, so you might have data centers present in the central part of India, east part of India, and the west part of India. So availability zone is nothing but it is a unique physical location within a region. So the use of availability zone is nothing but if, for example, there is some disaster in a particular region, let's say central India. So Microsoft will create an availability zone, which is nothing but a separate data center kind of a thing, wherein that zone will have their separate independent power, independent cooling, and the networking part. so that if there is some disaster, so you will just uh, use the availability zone and your application will be running so that your users will not face some downtime. So that is a use of availability zone. So that is a Microsoft is actually giving you the data infrastructure which is uh, useful in case of any failure. Now just let's try to log into the Azure portal and see how we can create those things that we just discussed and what are the benefits of those things. Hi. So now I'm logged into my Azure portal and let's just see what all resources we have. So you can see we don't have any resources. So we talked about what is resource. So resource is nothing but any entity which is managed by Azure. And now let's first try to create something. Let's go to create a resource. So you have bunch of options where you can create different kinds of resources. So databases, compute, containers. So for now, let's just create a storage account for us. So you can see right now the subscription option that I have is a free trial subscription. So if you are working on a real project, so you may have access to different subscription such as production environment, development environment, and testing environment. So right now I'm using the free trial subscription. So if you see resource group, we talked about resource group as well. So resource group is nothing but the logical grouping of the resources that we can create. So right now I don't have any resource group, so I'll create a new resource group. So we need to be very careful while creating the resource group. So resource group is nothing but a logical grouping. So right now I'm creating a storage account. So consider that this storage account will be used by different teams. So across the team, the members will use this storage account for their different purposes. For example, my API team will use this account for storing some files. Also, non-technical teams, sales teams will use this account to store some reporting data and all those stuff. So I have that in mind. So I'll create something called as a new resource group and I'll name it as something static resources underscore, say it's my team name. So let's give some name. So there are some naming rules that you have to follow. Storage account, another team name. So considering this storage account will be used, so I will choose different options for, but for now we will not go into much of the details. So I'll just keep the default values as is and proceed through review and create option. So it will just validate if the enter data is correct or not. So it's correct. So we'll just create a storage account. So it took around 2 minutes to complete the deployment of storage account. So now we can just go to resource. So you can see this storage account is now ready. So there are different services that storage account provides us, but for the moment we will not go into the details and let's just go to all resources now. So now you can see here the storage account that we just created is showing up under all resources. So now if we go to resource group, so you can see that we have created that storage account under this resource group. And if I click on the resource group, so it will show me the resources that are present in this resource group. But right now there is only one. So just to understand what is the use of resource group, so I'll just create a web app as well. And if you see, I have already filled in few details here. So uh, I have created a new resource group, products API team, and I have given the name to my resource. I have selected the runtime stack. I have created a operating system as a Windows, and I'll just keep the default values as is. and proceed through. And so after a minute, the deployment is completed on and all the necessary resources that we need for a web app to create. So all those are deployed. Now we can just go to resource and you can see the app service is now ready. So this is a second resource that we have created. If I go to all resources, so you can see all the resources that we have present right now under this subscription. So I have created this storage account and I have created this app service. So behind the scene, it has already created app service plan and app application insight for us. So we will talk about it later. That's not in the scope of this video. So let's just move ahead to resource group. So you can see now there are two resource group under this subscription. One is static resources and one is related to the products API team. So what is the use of resource group is nothing but we can divide logically the resources under one umbrella. So that is known as a resource group. So now if I have any resources which are common to all of my team members, so I will put those resources in the static resources and if any resources which is specific to my product team, so API team, so I'll put those into this particular resource group. So that is the benefit of providing a right resource group. So as a product owner, if I want to give access to X employee who is a part of a API team, so I will just give access of both the resources resource group. But if somebody is from non-technical team, which is they just need to access the data files such as the reporting data and all those stuff, so I'll just give access of this particular resource group. So it becomes very easy for managing those stuff. So that is the use of. So we also talked about Azure Active Directory. So whenever you create Azure account, so by default Azure creates one default directory for you. If you log into portal, you can see the default directory over here. So let's just move to Azure Active Directory. You can go from here or you can even select from the left panel as well. So if I go to Azure Active Directory, so you can see the information about your tenant. So this is basically the default directory that Azure have created already for you. So you can see here. So on the left panel, if you click on the user, so you can see for your organization what all user my default directory right now. So if I just want to create a new user, so I can just do that. If I click on new user, so here you can provide example. So here you have option to just auto generate the password, or you can even create a one password for the user. If I click on the create, so now the user is created. So right now in my organization there are two users, so which I can manage. So it is a very easy way to manage your users, manage your application, who all can access and what all they can access. These all things. So the Azure Active Directory is a very good. So now let's just again go back to Azure Active Directory. So you can see here you have an option to create a tenant. So there can be requirement where you are managing multiple tenants as well. So if I just click on create a tenant, so it's just selecting Azure Active Directory as a type of a tenant. And for the configuration, I just provide something. Let's say my company. So now it will just validate whether this particular domain is available or not. So I just append something. So now it is available. So I'll just so now it took around 2 to 3 minutes to create a tenant. So if I just go on to switch tenant, So now you can see I had default directory as one option, but now I have second tenant as well, which is my company XYZ. So now if I want to access this, so I can just switch to this tenant. So now you are seeing information which is related to your tenant, my company XYZ. Now you can notice here under the username you have your directory naming, and you need to also notice that the tenant ID is associated with each and every tenant that you have. So this is very useful. So we can use this tenant ID even when you are using OAuth authentication mechanism. So you have to pass this tenant ID whenever you are using Azure Active Directory for authentication purpose or authorization purpose, maybe for APIs or any application. So if I just click on the users of my company XYZ, so you can see there's only single user which is by default created. Now if I again go back to, so you can see here I have no resources and it is asking me to select a subscription. But in a previous tenant, which is a default directory, I had a subscription which was allowing me to create resources because I had that free trial version for that tenant or that default directory. But if you see, I switched to a new company and I don't have any subscription, so you can just associate that one particular tenant and subscriptions are different. So each and every subscription is associated with a single subscription only. So if I again go back to Active Directory and just click on the switch tenant again and switch to a default directory. So see here the different tenant ID, and if I click on home, so here if you see it is showing me that I can create resources, and it is not showing me that subscription screen where it asks you to create a subscription. So that is a difference between particular subscription which is associated with your particular Active Direct. And if you just go on to users, so you can see the two users that we had created for our default directory. So that is how you can manage your multi-tenant applications.